My name's Russell Kelly. I'm part of the product management team here in Arista. And primarily I look after, my focus is routing protocol extensions, transport side, so segment routing, various encapsulations of the day, MPLS, VXLAN. And in the short 3 minutes, I was going to say open to questions because I love this is a big discussion topic, but I think I'm standing between you and a good time, so I will keep it short.
It's routing, just go on.
It's routing. So from where do I start here? I guess I can just start at the challenges from an Arista standpoint. You know, we're very well positioned, I believe, in the sense that we have the silicon, the capabilities, and the hardware. We have, a fantastic software team that's delivered essentially us the platform to attack the routing space just at the right time. Just at the right time because in the industry, customers are desperately looking for solutions to, especially in the routing domain where the rest of the world has essentially overtaken them, right? They are squeezed, the routing domain is creaking at the seams, right? No matter what domain you really are in, if you're in the enterprise and you want to have more flexibility with your workloads and you want to adopt a hybrid cloud sort of strategy and you want the control, there's always the drive for more bandwidth, more automation, more control, less risk. If you're in the provider space, and Anshul mentioned it before, it's even more fraught. Whether you are providing wireless and wireline services and the massive explosion of end devices, IoT, and the rest of the little acronyms we can throw out there, is driving the bandwidth and the requirements for scalable services end to end beyond anything that was really imagined, even really a few years ago, right? Whether you're even working between the new content providers and if you are a service provider of old, it's moving from transit to really content delivery, right? So you're really having to change the way you're building your network, right? It's fundamentally changing it. And if you adopt the same approaches that you've been doing over time, you will fail. The routing architectures do not scale, right? They just will not scale. If you adopt the same platforms you've been using, the cost will be abhorrent, right? You will just sink yourself in cost, and you need to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to bandwidth and performance. And another big factor there is operationally, automating the network. We have the tools from day one to provide, that functionality to the customers, and they're adopting it big time. But the school of thought they're really looking at, which is again why we're very well positioned, is from the cloud principles, but they are subtly different from, the principles from compute and switching and storage, of which we have been, heavily involved. There are a couple of unique requirements in the routing space. Of course, scale out. For the scale out of the services, if you're doing network slicing and wireless environments, if you need to provide a virtual compute platform to do some provider NFV or some edge service computes, you need scale out at the edge. You need a platform that scales. You need an architecture that makes use of the ECMP that's simple, that reduces the risk. And these are our principles, right? This is the number one sort of discussion we have with the customers. And actually, point two is probably even the bigger talking point, right? This is where we really get involved with all levels, all types of customers, is simplification, especially in the routing domain, because you could skin a cat 10 different ways in the routing. There's been routing protocols designed for everything. But how do I decide exactly what I do need to deliver the service at scale? Or more importantly, what don't I need, right? And those are the really hard or difficult discussions that we're having, and where we really focus in our routing protocol development and our platform development, right? So this is really a big piece in the routing space. Software-driven control, of course, we have a great heritage here. We have a lot of tools. I think everyone knows us for this, but we are always developing this. To Ryan's presentation and to Ken's, this is number one, giving the tool set for customers to de-risk their networks, to automate it. And actually in the routing space, that goes beyond just sort of box level. That is also in the realm of the segment routing architectures of distributed routing where it makes sense, centralized control where I need end-to-end policy and flexible policy enforcement, at scale, right? So there's another angle here than probably has been in some of the previous generations of cloud principles. Ethernet and IP, it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, it's reliable, without a shadow of a doubt. That is, what is being deployed. And the big, of course, merchant silicon, which is where I get to my demo in 1 minute, gives us these capabilities to provide the flexibility, the functionality in silicon, the flexible pipeline, the encapsulations that we require in the routing space that aren't normally required in some of the cloud domains, right? The ability to do MPLS, the VXLAN, the ability to do label stacking, et cetera, and to do it at scale, right? To do the scaling on the control plane where we're getting up to 10 million in the RIB, 2 million in the FIB with merchant silicon, and you have the economics there with the platforms to deploy this new architecture. If you're trying to do that with old legacy platforms, to use that phrase, again, you will fail, right? You really need a new way, a level set of platforms that will provide you this functionality while at the same time you're driving down the complexity in the routing domain. So this is really where we work in the routing space, which is kind of exciting because we've always just sat around and invented ways of doing things in a new complex way and patted ourselves on the back. But really what you need to do is drive this down, make it simple, make it scalable, and make sure we ride the wave of this merchant silicon to provide the platforms to do it, right? That's fundamentally the message with us. From the universal spine and leaf platforms, it's all about the R series, R now and R2 for the Jericho 2 coming out, Jericho Plus. This provides us the scale, this provides us this flexibility, and it's just like a rocket ship, right? Tied to that is the single EOS image. Again, that's critical to make sure that they have this one sort of interface with their network that is flexible, programmable, and allows them to interact in a way that makes these architectures possible. I think I will skip this in the interest of time and just dive into one of these demos. And the reason I chose FlexRoute, or it was chosen for me, is because fundamentally the FlexRoute demonstration shows the scale, because at the base of all of this is you need a scalable platform. This is all done on, by the way, on a 1RU platform here. So you have a flexible, scalable, scale out, high scale ECMP. You have a FIB, of a million routes in this platform, and you have a RIB that's capable of up to 10 million. So this is fundamentally, no matter what you're writing over this, you need this reliable, scalable fabric. Doesn't matter what else. If the foundations are broken, the rest of it isn't going to work. So that's why it's chosen. Let me just jump into it and show it. I will make a point just here because we get asked, and I wish I had time to talk about EVPN and VXLAN and all the work that we're doing on the protocol side and segment routing, because that is, it's important for us as we get into these routing domains that we have these core capabilities. We pick our horses and we go with it, and we exclude the things that aren't required, right? And I don't have time right now, but I do want to just mention this, these UCMP kind of examples where it's a functionality that's been around for a long time. But if you are working with your customers and you're saying, okay, what do I have? What can I exclude? Do I need something else? No, I can use this. I can extend it just a little bit and make it wholesale useful for sort of an edge use case where this is a very scalable BGP-based solution for signaling bandwidth changes in high scale, leaf spine architectures or a scaled edge, right? If something changes, who's going to tell me that it's changed? BGP is going to tell me that it's changed, right? And then passing this up and down, so just extending the capabilities a little bit is a huge gain, right? And then the other one is this URL prefix list load, which again at the edge, loading massive prefix lists and ACLs is a pain. It has taken systems out, it's taken minutes to commit. We can use some of the infrastructure outside of EOS on Linux to essentially load a file, right, from Flash, and it's done in under half a second. Right? And then using the automation tools, you can run this as a cron job. You can keep this going in the background. You can use the API to push it. So just these little things, right, make a huge difference in some of these domains. Yes, sir.
Strategical question.
Yeah.
Arista is an extremely innovative company.
I mean, if you look what you've done in Jericho, it's interesting, right? If you look what you do with Cloud Vision, it's amazing. This is 5 years old, 7 years old Cisco roadmap, right? Where's your innovation in routing?
The innovation in routing here is in the FlexRoute, getting the most out of the platform. Okay, so I guess that's my point. And when it comes to the UCMP, I totally agree, right? It's not about I need the latest and greatest feature. We are doing some of that. We choose our horses when it comes to VPN support. We choose EVPN. We would do address family support when and needed. Making bets on what is going to be the sort of standard approach when it comes to the sort of higher order functionality, which we are putting in there. This really is an example of really minimizing it, simplifying a network, right? This is what it actually comes down to have a discussion with the customer and say, you know what, you don't need all that. You can actually just rely on this. It's quite a tough conversation. And then you just take this functionality and you extend it a bit in the sense that we can take this community in, but we can advertise it down, right? So you can make it a wholly useful little edge use case. So I put this up there just as an example of the fact that this isn't all about latest, greatest. Some of it is, and for sure it is on the platform side to make sure we're getting the most out of the platform. You're staying ahead of the curve, you really get those economics, but some of it is about simplification. And so that's my answer to that.
I think it would be great to see Arista doing more in ATF and in general. So
I agree.
In my free time, I'm running routing working group. We are working on next generation routing protocols for data center.
Right.
And I sent an email to RT and your SVP. Would be great to see your faces.
There's RT, me, and one other person in the team, so we'll be there. We are involved. We did go over to the ENTC testing last year, and we have really just started our journey into this, right? I mean, it is a couple of years old. We've had some very targeted deployments to date at scale, so we've always got that now in our mind is scale, simplification. But as we get into different markets, yes, for sure, we need to be more involved in these working groups. So when it comes to EVPN, we implemented the best implementation and tested that through and throughout and did a fantastic job, right? So on the control plane, the team's ability to execute is fantastic. And then on the data plane, we have the scale that's required. So
it would be great to see more of you.
I agree. Send me an email. Convince Arsi to send me over. Let me just show you real quick then, if I can, just one of the FlexRoute things, because it is, what does that mean? It is just an example. So just remember, this is like just a 1RU platform. Oh, by the way, this is the segment routing controller that was home built. So let me just bring this up. So this example, it's very simple again, but it shows the power, right? So we simply have Ixia just generating a copy of the internet routing table and 100,000 other routes. And from a router standpoint, I just want to show you a couple of things. So we just have, and I have to do a CLI demo. Isn't that disappointing? After all you guys are like, automation, I'm on the CLI, but it is showing best here, show IP BGP some. So just as an example, and this is actually on a Jericho platform. So, as we strive forward, as I mentioned, we're at 2 million in the fib. We're always adding capabilities on the control plane, but just from a topology standpoint, I need to jump back over to this one here. So this is effectively what we have running. Super simple, but just a couple of VRFs, because now we are getting into the use cases where you can do multi-VRF sort of implementations, and this is just VRF Lite, but even when it comes to like edge functionality, we choose exactly what is required to meet 95% of customers' goals. Where can they step back to with regards to not so much scale, but some of the functionality that's required in these edge use cases. And this is just an example of bringing in, here the internet routing table in this VRF. And if you just do show IP BGP, I think it's VRF. I can never remember quite the CLI. I'm with you on CLI. And here, so in total we have on the control plane, somewhere in the order of 4 or 5 million routes in this use case. And if we just do show platform, SAND is our implementation in layer 3 summary. This is the routes, the number of routes. Sorry. Okay. I don't even know how to scroll up. 1 second. This is the number of routes here that we have. This 800,000 routes, V4 routes, and 50,000 odd routes, V6 routes on this Jericho. No unprogrammed routes, and we essentially FlexRoute, if you don't know, is one of those innovations that's both software and hardware, right? So it really is. It's a fantastic tool set, a fantastic innovation, because it takes the most out of the silicon, right? We use our own secret sauce in that sense, but it goes hand in hand with the work that Ken was doing with regards to like scaling out, designing architectures or software architectures within EOS to really scale out the routing side as well. Just as was done in SysDB, it's a concept with NetTable and NetDB to scale out the routing architecture. So we have this combination, and it's always optimized to program these routes into fib, but also have the scale and rib, and have this flexibility that if routes change, if next hops change, we make use of the underlying ECMP, resilient ECMP in these platforms. And it's just an example of simple stuff, right, but can deliver massive results. When you think about this is all running on a 1RU platform, we have customers out in Europe and here running internet pairing sort of examples where there was a half rack system. This is now running on a 1RU system. Right. And now they can build out sort of fabrics as it would be a resilient box with you're relying on SSO, you're relying on dual REs, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of platforms build out a spine leaf architecture where you're relying inherently on the resiliency in the fabric itself, which are extremely hard to break. I don't know if you've tried to break a spine leaf architecture, trying to bring down the overlay where you're messing around with the underlay. Really, really hard to do, and these are the sort of fundamentals here. If you have this scale in hardware and you're relying on the ECMP below, you'll see that even if we fail a link, we only lose 50 milliseconds of traffic. So these are some of the architectures we drive towards. So I am well over. Thank you for hanging in there with me. Are there any questions aside from I want to see more of you, because I would love to? No?
So what's after BGP?
What's after BGP? What is after BGP? It's the flavor of the month. What we do is extend BGP. It seems to be holding its own for now. We actually are very BGP focused, even in control plane for segment routing and controllers. We're well into the SRTE extensions as that is a control plane. So for us, and I think in the industry, you still see it very much, front and center. What's in the underlay? We'll see. It's always changing. But we've done an awful lot of development and scale in BGP.
We did.
Yeah. So a lot of investment there. So, thank you.